Okay, so we were talking about the BEwell webinar, Business Entrepreneurial Wellness. That's what it stands for, and it's my connection and my contribution. These are my objectives where I am in my journey, my life journey. And so for many years, I've never really invested in connections because I was a lone wolf. I go very fast on my own. So I never really invested in that, and I've realized that that was something that was missing in my life. And my contribution is what I can now offer to future or to present entrepreneurs is my business experience, because I've been running my own business for 25 years. So what can I give back now is to give back some of the pitfalls, some of the successes that I've had, and to bring people who are experts in their fields onto this BEwell webinar to share their insights. And the participants can have an hour's value to take something away. So this is the aim of the BEwell webinars that I have, that I hold every Tuesday in the afternoon. We changed from the morning to the afternoon because we want to get an American audience, and because of timing, Europe and America, I've had to change, and so now we're down to 5 in the afternoon, from 5 to 6. So today with us we have, let me ask someone else who's just entering. So we have Jeremias. Let me just quickly introduce her with a second. So Jan is a seasoned health coach with an illustrious journey spanning over 3 decades in the realm of health and wellness. Throughout her life, she has navigated through her own health challenges, ultimately discovering a path that resonates deeply with her, one rooted in an integrative approach. As a health coach, her mission is to guide and empower individuals along their own journeys to vibrant health. Drawing from her extensive clinical research background in immunology of infectious diseases and her years in research in women's health and her own personal experiences, she has chosen a comprehensive approach that combines the pillars of nutrition, movement and yoga, essential oils and meditation. She firmly believes that true wellness is achieved when we address all facets of our being, body, mind, and spirit. What sets her approach apart is its inclusivity, extending not only to people, but also to our beloved animal companions, our pets. Yes, you heard that right. Jan has the privilege of working with both people and pets, recognizing that their well-being is intricately intertwined. The leash goes both ways. In fact, she's not only a health coach for humans, but also co-author of the best-selling book, Spoil Your Pet, a comprehensive guide to using essential oils, because spoil is oil with a big O, oil, essential oils for the well-being of our cherished animal friends. So whether you're seeking to embark on a transformative health journey, eager to harmonize your mind and body through movement and meditation, or curious about the potential of essential oils and essential oil-based supplements, Jan offers private or group, in-person and online yoga classes and meditations and so on. So Jan offers many things, and so today we have Jan as our expert who will talk to us about the emotional and health benefits of having a pet, or pet therapy, or I have a pet, I have a dog, I have a border collie, and so we can have this informal conversation about how much energy goes into even having a pet, and what do we get back, and what is the exchange. So Jan, would you like to sort of introduce yourself and maybe start the webinar?
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for hopping on. Nice to virtually meet everybody. I really wanted this to be informal, but I'll give you a few stories to start. So I think I always felt more connected to animals and more comfortable around animals than I did around people. That was just who I was. I kind of think this is genetic sometimes. According to my mother, my grandparents had multiple pets and who would inevitably give birth right after they got them. So my grandfather would take home everything that he found. And I had multiple pets through my childhood. And I remember this really strong feeling I had, like, I would talk to my animals. Predominantly we had cats. I would, take care of them, but I also had this very sort of strong bond with them that was very hard to explain to people. Some people might have said it was almost like intuitive and animal whisperer type relationships with animals, where, we would be traveling and I'd get this really strong sense that my cat at home had gotten in a fight and got injured, and we would get home and the cat had been in a fight and gotten injured. And I kind of never talked about it with anybody. It wasn't something you talked about in kind of mainstream world where I grew up. But these experiences happened periodically, and fast forward to like being an adult where I was really blessed with having probably the best dog on the face of the earth when I was an adult, my first adult dog, who taught me so much. And she was the most laid back creature you would ever meet. Like a bomb could have gone off and she wouldn't have noticed. I mean, she was so well trained and she was just so mellow, so the opposite of me, like in personality, because that is not how I am. But she was the one who brought me to alternative modalities. I mean, at the age of 14, she got what was the equivalent of canine cognitive dysfunction, which is old dog dementia. And and I started to explore all these alternative modalities to help her. Coming from my clinical research background, I didn't really believe in holistic stuff very much. And I had never been raised like that. So it was really when they worked on her that I kind of was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Because it's interesting when you work with animals, they don't process things like we do. They don't think to themselves, oh my gosh, is this a placebo or do I really feel better? Like they just feel better. And so I think it was like, she was a demonstration to me that a lot of these modalities, even though I couldn't explain them, if somebody were to ask me how Reiki worked at the time, I would probably not have been able to tell them what it was doing. But when I learned how to practice it and it worked on her, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It then started that people were coming to me with their pets, like people were calling me with pet questions, and I kind of got known to be the pet person. And so indirectly, not something I planned, she kind of opened up a whole business to me. So she did give me this gift, and I firmly believe that we're given the pets we need. Our pets can reveal a lot about us. I then now have my great dog, Tonka, who I think maybe some of you saw kind of nuzzling up and giving me kisses, who is so opposite of Casey, who a pin could drop and she would fly across the room. I mean, she is so sound sensitive and so anxious, but she has been this mirror for me because when I'm anxious, she's 100 times worse. So she taught me so much about who I was, like, and what my tendencies were. I mean, to the extent where, like, if I was anxious, she would be out in the backyard having stomach issues, and she would come back in. I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And so I had to really kind of learn how to temper and work with the stress or the anxiety or whatever emotions I was feeling. Because let me tell you, like the other day, I was feeling like a little down, and she's the opposite. She won't cuddle me. She'll kind of avoid me. And then I have to decompress, and then she's all over me. And so she's this huge like barometer of how I'm feeling emotionally. And I think animals can do so many things for us. I mean, and I'd love to hear some people's other experiences, and we can maybe chat about some of the research that's out there now and whatnot. But it's amazing to me how they have that ability. They can tell us so much about ourselves and so much about our environment, which we tend not to notice.
Yeah, let me say hello to Helena and John, who've just jumped on. I don't know, David, do you have something to share about James, that massive cat you got behind you? We can't hear you. David? Okay, well, we're waiting for David to join in. John, how are you doing with your dog?
It's challenging.
Yep, I'm back.
Oh, okay, you're
Go
back.
for it.
Go, John. John, it's challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging. But what Jan was saying is, yeah, if I go out and I have a 40-kilo German Shepherd called Wookie, and he's an absolute handful. But I've changed a lot in the time that I've had him. I had him from when he was 12 weeks old. I've changed a lot because I myself have some very reactive tendencies too. So that is just a real bad mix. Before I was kind of educated myself about how to be with dogs, I would literally, we'd just fly out the door and it was chaos. So now we do things quite differently, and I try to be a lot calmer most of the time. But yeah, it's interesting what you say, because I try to be super calm when we're preparing to go out, and then that's transformed the whole experience. It's still not ideal, but it's a lot better than what it was before. So yeah, but I do struggle a lot with managing our relationship, because it's inside it's okay, but outside I have to keep a tight leash pretty much all the time. So it's difficult, yeah.
Okay. David, what about you?
Well, sorry for the rolling blackouts we're having today, but James is a Siberian, and they're just completely different kinds of animals. Let's see here. Their eyes are different, their snout's different, their stance is different. You can't tell from this picture, but anyway, his back goes up higher and everything like that. He can jump from the ground to the top of the fence. And he's just a really wonderful cat. I had a different cat too that was a black and white short hair, and he was listed as my service cat. And I don't know, most of y'all don't know, but I survived the blast of a B-52 in 75, so I have a lot of different issues. And what he would do, and what I learned from him, is if I was, my blood pressure got too low, or if it got too high because my blood sugar was too low, he would jump on my chest and he'd listen with his ears to my chest or his snout, and then he'd start pumping on me. And I learned from that, I need to go check my blood sugar. And so they had him listed as my service cat because of that. It was pretty cool.
So animals are really intelligent. I mean, Helena, what about you? Do you have a pet?
No, right now I don't have a pet, but I grew up with pets. So yes, but they could sense when I remember they were sensing if I was sad or something. I just remember that one. Yeah. Yeah. But recently I have a weird experience, a cool experience about communicating with a dog. So that's why I wanted to come here, because I want to learn more since that happened. So yeah, I'm keen to learn more if Jan has more information on that.
We've got Trude as well, and that Trude is a horsewoman, if I'm not wrong. So we have a cat, we have a dog. Trude, I don't know, are you there? You connected? Can you give us any information on your passion for horses?
For the horse could sense my mood immediately. It was really weird. So if I was stressed, it travels all the way through your body, and I was sitting on him differently. It was, I mean, if somebody knew me inside out, it was him.
Wow.
And I knew from him that I was stressed. So then I could try to regulate. So it was a connection that was, yeah, I've never had such a connection with any living thing.
There's a very interesting documentary. I'll give it back to Jan, called The Herd, H-E-R-D, The Herd, and it talks about this ranch in America. I don't know exactly where this lady bought this massive open space, and she uses horses as a therapy. So people go and stay a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, even on this ranch. I don't know where it is. What's the video, the documentary on, I think, YouTube, The Herd, and it just shows the power of these animals and the connections that you can have. Like, you know, you go on this ranch and you're given your horse based on your characteristics. So they look at you, they analyze you, this woman there, and then they say, Pedro, that horse there is yours for the week or for the 10 days. And you have to, you know, you look after that horse, you feed it, you wash it, you do everything with it for 10 days. So it's a great documentary to have an idea of pets and humans. Jan?
I mean, there's been such great work in, like, I mean, in the veteran population for PTSD in veterans with horses, that is just remarkable. Because they do have the ability to sense. And I met a gentleman who, you know, had worked in a situation like that. And he said that, you know, one day he was standing there and one of the guys was on this horse, and, you know, and the woman the trainer came up to him and said, like, what's going on today? And he's like, nothing. He's like, well, that's not what the horse is saying, the way the horse is acting. And she left and she went away. And all of a sudden she turned around and he was talking to this horse and just like crying of, like, you know, letting all this stuff out, I guess. And I think that's the gift of, you know, one of the gifts of animals. I mean, I said earlier, as a child, I would talk to my pets. And I think that, you know, a lot of people do, because it's the only being in their life that doesn't judge them, you know. And I saw the most adorable cartoon one day with this like dog in the front seat of a car. Not that I'm advocating dogs in front seats, because I don't, but and the gentleman like talking to the dog and the dog talking back in a little bubble, and it said, this isn't what I signed up for. And it was just like me of how much we share with our pets, more so than anybody else probably, because, you know, most of the time people have agendas. Animals don't have agendas. Their primary agenda is just to love you. And that's their agenda. And so we feel very comfortable. I think it also explains why I've run pet loss support groups, why pet loss is such a huge loss for people, far more so than animals. I mean, than people, because they're with us through everything. I mean, when I lost my dog, and then I mentioned earlier that got me onto this sort of the healing journey with pets, I started working with her with these alternative modalities, and she was 14 and she lived to 90, which was quite old. I mean, she was a big dog. And, you know, thankfully my animals do live really long. I think it is a tribute to the care I take of them. But when you think about 19 years, or for my friend who just lost her horse at the age of like 30 something, 32 or something, that's a long period of time to be with something. I mean, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, you know, Casey went through this with me and she went through that with me, you know, a job change, a divorce, like all these personal situations that she had been there for. And then all of a sudden, I think when they're gone, we feel it so much more dramatically, even than people. Yeah.
I'm just amazed at the dog that, you know, my dog is always alert. He's always, you know, I wake up at 2 in, 8 in the afternoon, he's there. And I think, wow, where as soon as I open the door and come out the bedroom, he comes running along. And I think, doesn't he ever sleep? Doesn't he ever, you know, I mean, can't be full on, but they are full on. It's that full on presence that we sometimes lack, where we're distracted, whatever. He just is there, ready to go for a walk, ready to play. He's greeting me. And you know, he wants to be right next to me. And I just said, do you have, like, you know, I'll go into the kitchen and he's there, he's under the table, right next to my feet. So yeah, it's how can we learn from them, Jan? What can we learn from them?
I always say, first of all, I think they're such a great example of how to live, like basically what's important to them, love or companionship. I mean, animals are not meant to live in isolation. They're just not. Most animals in the wild die if they're alone. So that's just because they're either can't hunt because they're used to hunting in packs, or so they starve, or they're preyed upon because they're vulnerable. There's not a pack there. So it's hardwired in them to be around another being. And so I think that, when we get a pet, my dog is a sole dog now. She's my only pet for now. And and I'm her pack. I'm his pack. Like to him, like I'm his pack. So I think sometimes it explains to people why they don't like when we go. I mean, Tonka is terrible by himself because, it's kind of like they didn't sign up to be alone 12 hours a day if we're working and we leave the house. That's not what they bargained for. They're used to other beings being present. And I think so. They're very companion oriented, very loyal, and loving. So I think that's one thing they teach us. The other thing is sort of how to live, like what's important: eating, drinking, sleeping, and playing. Those are the three primary. And Tonka has a job. I mean, he's very much the protector. So he definitely has a job. And I see a difference with him when I take him to a friend of mine a lot. And to him, it's like going on vacation. Like you could just see a shift. He's like, oh my gosh, I don't need to be on duty now. Like I can just relax. I don't have a job here. Because he's also part border collie, and border collies they need a job.
Yeah.
And I've learned anything, animals that need a job, if you don't give them a job, they find a job, and usually it's not what you want them to do. They're going to look for something to do, and usually it's trouble because they don't understand. But I think they teach us so much about being present.
Yeah.
About, the whole idea of, how to take care of yourself, adaptability, which is amazing. Like I've worked with a number of people who've had disabled dogs or dogs that became injured, and then when disabled, they adjust really well. Like they learn how to adapt to whatever their situation is quite proficiently. Like my friend's dog who went blind, a few times around the perimeter of the room, learning where the furniture is, and then they're fine. And so they have this uncanny ability. They don't go down the pity party. Like they don't sit there and they don't say, woe is me, like I'm injured or this happened to me. They just kind of work with what they're given.
Just sort of reflecting on what we were saying before, that dog being in the front seat of the car. And sometimes I go to a restaurant and I'll see a dog being fed at the table, and you hear about cases where dogs actually sleep in the bed with the owner and so on. I don't know. I mean, I don't let my dog do any of those things. I love my dog, but I know what he does when he sees other dogs and when he goes outside. And so I don't let him. I know what he's done. So I said, you're not going to lick my face because I've seen what you've done outside there, for example. And so there are boundary lines that I set, but some people don't. So how does that work, Jan? What can you tell us about boundary lines? That are they necessary, or do we just let the pets do whatever they want?
Not at all. I mean, when I worked with a dog behaviorist for a while, and I used to call him for recommendations and for guidance, send people to him. He was awesome. And I took Tonka, my dog, to him for a while. And he said, basically, rules for a dog are kind of, no rules for a dog is like giving a child no rules. A child that doesn't have any parameters or any boundaries tends to be very anxious because they need rules and they need guidelines. So he said, if you have an anxious dog, they need rules, like they need a schedule, they need rules. And it's a constant kind of thing for me. Yes, he does sleep with me, but he's only allowed in bed when I invite him up. So it's my bed and he's coming in. It's not like it's his bed and I'm lucky enough to be sleeping with him. And so there are he only gets on the furniture I tell him he can get on. And so, he's pretty, and it's constant. I mean, he's 12 and I still have to reinforce it. It's not like, because he will take advantage of it. And he knows the difference, like I said, when he's not here, Like my friend's very laid back, and he's at her house. Like I caught him one day putting his paws on the counter and like going after food. And I looked at him and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you know, you're not allowed to do that. And he gets down and he kind of looks at me like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, you know, but he pushes, like he's going to push the boundary. But they need, I mean, of my opinion, I really feel like that's a healthy environment for them. Because in the wild, they would have roles, like they would have jobs. You know, certain people are scouts and hunters, and other people kind of survey the periphery in a pack. Like they all have a role, and they kind of honor those roles. So I feel like that's what we need to do with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you guys can come in. Anyone can jump in. Okay. Any questions you have, or I'm just sort of curious, so I'm asking Jan these questions, but the microphone's open. Talking about being in a pack as a dog. I mean, I don't know. Cats don't move in a pack, right? Cats are solitary.
They can actually.
Lions do. Lions are very much,
Okay.
they'll have a pod, and some of the wild cats. And I don't know enough about like feral cats that live in the wild, like you know, domesticated cats that live outside. I think they do live like in real packs and in areas together. I don't know how much of a relationship they have with each other, but I think they do move in some sort of, you know, pack kind of environment. David, I cut you off. Did you want to share something?
Oh, I don't feel like I got cut off or anything. Sorry, I got a wax sense humor. No, I'll say with our two cats that we have, they're always doing things together. You'll see them sitting down, looking out the back French doors side by side, watching the same squirrels or birds or whatever it is they're going to watch. When they go outside, we don't let them go outside very often because Siberians are a bit expensive. But when they go outside, they'll go out there and they'll lay underneath a big oak tree we have or something like that. And like I mentioned earlier, the squirrels come right up to him and try to get him to chase them. It's crazy. I mean, you know, you would think cats are going to chase squirrels, right? Well, he's comfortable with them coming up to him and everything like that, and no problem. It's really strange. But both of our cats together, they'll do things together. They'll, you know, run security around the backyard, things like that.
It's completely opposite, I think, to John's dog that runs after cats. So we have cats running after squirrels, and we got dogs after. Just going back to my question before regarding the pack, you know, being in a pack. The question is the human always the leader of the pack?
In a good relationship, I think it would be. Cats different. Cats are sort of independent and kind of have a unique personality of their own and unique traits. And even though I have met cats that are dog-like, you know, in behavior, like they'll fetch and things like that. But for dogs, you know, I think it's not uncommon with people who kind of let the dogs rule the house, that they're not the primary, like the dog is the alpha and they're not the alpha. I always find hierarchies in pets really interesting. Like it has nothing to do with size. Like you can have the smallest dog and it'll be an alpha in a household where it's the dominant one. And you'll have large dogs that kind of, you know, just bow to this like small, teeny little dog. And you think to yourself, like, you know, my friend had 5 dogs and they had like 2 bowls and they would line up, and it was like the alpha, the little chihuahua that would eat first. And then you would watch, it was almost like progressive in size, where like the German Shepherd was in the way back. And you would think the bigger the dog, the more dominant they are. But I almost feel like smaller dogs feel like they have to make up for their size. So they tend to be really kind of, they can be aggressive, I find. They can be like really kind of nasty in a lot of ways, because I think they feel like they have to defend themselves in some way.
So what happens when you have an alpha dog in the family?
Well, I mean, I think that usually what happens is you there's very little control. It's fine if the dog, like, let's say, one is you have a house where you don't care about its items. It also depends on the dog. So if you have a laid back dog, that's like a breed, that's kind of the alpha. It's going to be different than if you have like a border collie or a, or German shepherd, that's the alpha, which in size alone, you don't want them to be boss. And two is they can get destructive because they have no rules or no boundaries. And so what's interesting is when, is I said, I love hierarchy stuff, is that if you have a multi-pet household where the alpha dies, there's definitely like an acclimation period because the animals that are left don't know who to go to as the leader. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I used to have somebody who told me what to do or who said it was okay to eat or would direct them in some way. And now all of a sudden that's gone. So all of a sudden there's a change. So I think pets feel loss of other pets. And sometimes if they're not the leader, then the one that was the leader all of a sudden adjusts because they have to figure out, because all of a sudden, if let's say it's a 2-pet household and they were the leader and the other pet dies, all of a sudden they have no one to lead. And they're like, okay, like now no one's looking to me for direction anymore. And that kind of is disorienting to them. Sometimes like animals will cry over loss of another animal. It's kind of interesting to see. Actual real tears. Like I have a friend who has 2 horses and a donkey and lost one horse. And she said the other horse like literally had tears in its eyes, which I had never heard of, but never realized, but that was her experience anyway.
In our house, we've got a dog and a cat. Okay, we've got a dog and a cat. We had the dog first, and then the cat came along as a kitten, and he's there. So the dog outside, if he sees a cat, he'll run after it. But when he comes home, he's all excited sometimes, and he sees the cat. He tries to go for the cat, then he realizes that it's our cat. I hope, and so he doesn't attack that cat. But I don't know. The question is, how does the dog like go outside and he runs after, tries to catch the cats outside, but when he comes home, he's quite calm with the cat in the house? What happens?
I mean, I think it must be, first of all, this sort of sense and smell thing. I mean, their sense of smell is so profound that I think they have they can odor-wise detect something that's within their environment that's theirs. I mean, I had 2 cats and then got Tonka. My 2 cats have since passed, but he was always fine with cats and still is pretty good. I have to remind him, like I'll sit there and say, that's not our cat. Like he doesn't necessarily chase after them in the wild. Like he won't go after them, but my friend has a cat and he goes over her house all the time. And he doesn't understand. He wants to play. The cat thinks he's huge and is like, what is this? Because she has 2 tiny dogs. But they tolerate each other and it's not like, but they're fine. But it is some sort of sense of like, I think a lot of it has to do with aroma and the fact that their sense of smell. I mean, they release pheromones and all these other sort of hormones that are in the air that kind of say, okay, it helps them navigate their world. I mean, they're a lot more attuned to things than we are.
Yeah.
Like
your dog has some problems with cats, don't they? He does.
Yeah,
some issues.
do you have cats, David?
Say again?
No, I'm John. I'm sorry. Do you have cats?
no, I don't have cats, but there's cats everywhere where I live. So yeah, we walk out and he'll stop and he'll slow down to look underneath all the cars because he knows that's where they are. Sorry, there's a guy there. Yeah, so and if he sees a cat, we came out yesterday and he looked to the right hand side of the door. There's a cat sort of 40 meters away, instantly hair up on his back. I had to pull him round the corner, and even round the corner, he kept turning back, trying to see what was going on behind us. So he's like super fixated on killing cats. Yeah, I'm I'm on high alert anytime we go out for a walk. I've got to the stage now where I take him out early in the morning and then late at night, because that's the minimal activity that's going to be outside. And I'm even working with a dog behaviorist myself. And the problem I have is cars. He goes batshit crazy at cars as well. So yeah.
It's interesting because, you know, from all the work that I've done through the years with people and, you know, just speaking to dog trainers and dog behaviorists and all these different things, first, they, like I said, they do need that direction. And it's remarkable that, you know, that you can see an animal sort of definitely change in their behavior, because, you know, somebody knows what they're doing and can read the signs of what, like dog reactivity, let's say, you know, like the hair stepping back or the, you know, drooling is one for anxiety. Like there are signs if you know what to look for. And I'm not an expert at looking at those signs, but one of the things, like John, I mean, I very rarely, Tonka's pretty well behaved, and I could probably let him off leash like a good amount of time where I wouldn't have to walk with him on a leash. I have to because of my neighborhood, but I probably could. But he definitely responds to where it makes me much more alert. And usually if he's not paying attention or not doing directions, it's that my directions are not clear. I mean, that's what happens, is part of their reactivity is like a fraction of a second. And by the time we notice that they've done something, like they've moved on. Like when my friends as a dog trainer said that, like if he does something wrong and then you reprimand him, he's moved on already. So when you reprimand him, you have no idea. He has no idea why you're reprimanding, because to him that, like, it's seconds later. He's like not thinking about that. And so that's why she's this huge advocate of positive reinforcement training. So maybe basically reinforcing good behavior and just doing that often and often enough that if they get rewarded, they're not going to want to do anything bad. But it's really interesting that they react and respond so quickly, far faster than we could, like, you know, correct them if we needed. I think that's why they get confused sometimes, because they're like, Mom's yelling at me, but why is she yelling at me? I have no clue. You know, like, her dad's upset, like, what did I do wrong? And they don't, like, to them, it's like, you know, we're not fast enough.
So you're talking about direction, but in that situation where he's just not.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
He's outwardly focused. He's not focused on me at all. How do I begin to give him direction there? Inside I can, if I have his attention, but outside is a different story.
From my experience, what you need to do, and I still do this with Tonka's really good when I walk in, but he loves other dogs. So to him, it's very hard to control him if I see another dog, because he wants to play and he thinks every dog's a friend. So, which is not the case. And so for me, it's literally, I have to break his gaze. Like if he's pulling, I make him sit, and then I have to get between him and whatever he's looking at. And basically I wait till he makes eye contact. It's like I wait there for a few seconds or a minute until he kind of, you know, and I correct him a few times if he goes to get up, and then I wait for him to look at me. And then I take a few breaths, we might call like kind of synchronized breathing for the two of us. And then we move on. But most of the time, that's what I have to do, is like I have to break his kind of reaction. Like I just have to somehow put a barrier between whatever he's focused on and that object. And it's not easy if they're getting unruly, but it's like, okay, just, you know, you got to sit, and we're not moving until you sit. And as people being impatient sometimes, like we're on a schedule, right? I got to walk the dog and I only have this amount of time. And so we're focused on like them going to the bathroom, getting some exercise, and then getting home. And then, you know, a lot of times that's not the way they're going to work.
Yeah, that's what I get when my son takes the dog out. You know, I asked my son to take the dog out because, and I said, I've taken him out 2 or 3 times. Can you take him out? He's gone and he's come back. And I said, wait, that was a quick walk. I mean, How long did that work? That like 2 minutes. He just went around the block and he comes back home quickly. And so then I feel sorry for the dog, but then I think I suppose when you're a 15-year-old kid, I suppose you're not really looking at taking the dog for a nice stroll and a nice walk. You just want to get back in. I got a question for you. The idea of animals having this idea of time. So whether I leave my dog for a week in a room or whether I leave my dog for 5 minutes in the room, is there a difference? Does he or she, does it understand the difference of time?
You know, I've often wondered that myself, because my dog will be just as happy if I leave and take out the garbage and I come back. It's like I've been gone for a month, and I'm like, it's a great, I mean, I love it because it's adorable and it makes me smile and laugh, but I'm always like, I was just here, you know, and then he'll have the same reaction if I've been gone like a week or 2 weeks, probably a little bit more, but I don't know how much like comprehension of time they actually have. You know, in my opinion, not, you know, that's just my feeling. What does everybody else, anybody else have any ideas on
funny
that?
you say that, because I'm taking Wookie out now for short walks, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes at a time. And I used to take him out for hours and hours. We used to walk miles every day. And after these short walks, the way I do them now, he comes back and I have exactly the same result, more or less. He comes in, he's quite chilled when he comes back from the walk. So it wasn't necessarily the length or the time of the walk, but more the quality of what we do while we're out. Because I'm not taking him out with an agenda of, oh, we need to do the walk. This is time for him to be outside. So it's, you know, if there's no cats around, yeah, he can sniff and we walk slowly, and if he pulls, I stop, and we do that, and we go all the way out, come back, and it's a nice safe route. So that's the and even if I take him out for a quick quote unquote walk, that's still doing the same thing, and he comes back and he chills out quite quick. Because I was under the impression that I had to do loads of walks, and the other mistake I was making is he was getting hyperactive inside. And I was thinking, oh, this is the time I need to take him out because he's got too much energy. But now I wait until he's calm and then we go out. So that's been the other thing. But yeah, the quality of the time that he gets outside, I think, is really important, rather than the amount of time that he actually gets.
It's
Our cat, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Our cats are on a time schedule. So at 3:30 in the morning, they start chasing each other and playing, hunting and stuff like that. So at 4 o'clock, they want their treats. Then you have a scheduled lunch and breakfast and everything else all put together and everything. But when my wife and I have gone off for something, say on the weekend, and we're doing some stuff and running around, before we even pull in the driveway, that head is looking out the window waiting for us. And so we'll come up to the door and he'll be right there at the door waiting for us patiently. And then the other cat will be on the dinner table, which is close to where we come in, and wants to give my wife a kiss on the lips. So, they have their own little things, that they do. It's kind of fun, actually. But, with the premise of the meeting here, what I want to say to where you're coming from on a lot of the animals and stuff, at the VA, the Veterans Administration, that's where the veterans get their health care and all that kind of stuff, hospital and all that kind of stuff. They used to be a sterile hospital type environment. Today, you can go in there and you'll see all kinds of dogs, small dogs, big dogs, medium-sized dogs, as service animals or sympathy pets, or what do you call it when they're there for an
Therapy.
encouragement? What?
Therapy. Therapy dogs?
Yes, therapy dogs and stuff like that. And like I say, I had a service cat from the VA, which was the black and white one we used to have. And so they're getting more into all that stuff. They're getting more into holistic, medicines and stuff like that too. So it's becoming a completely different atmosphere when you go there now. And everyone likes it. If you don't have
another reflection I had was like, walking the dog. When you walk the dog or the cat, is like, for us, walking the dog, for me, walking the dog personally, I walk the same street because I live in a block. So I walk down the street, I do like a square and I come back. And I'll probably do that, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a day. And for me, it's the same street because nothing really happens. It's the same trees. I see the same trees, nothing really changes. But someone pointed this out to me that made me actually reflect on this. That for the dog, every time they walk down that street, it's a different street. Because the dogs that went there before them had marked their territories, marked the territory. And so for my dog that comes along, it smells and it's continuing. And I said, what are you smelling? The same tree. It's the same tree that I saw yesterday, that you saw this morning, this afternoon, you see again. But for them, it's a different tree because it's a different mark of a territory. And so it made me also think that every time that I just think, oh, how boring, I'm walking down the same street with a dog. For him, it's a different journey each time. So I don't know if that's any connection, Jan. Is that something that we could learn from as humans?
Well, we don't mark our territory.
Well, you
maybe we do, David. Maybe we do.
I think energetically do, or like I said, hormones or smell, because I think we always know that animals have the ability to smell stuff that obviously we can't smell. And how do they always know a person who's afraid of them. Like they pick up on that, and it has to, from what I've read, that has to do with certain odors that are released during fear and things like that. So they sense that. I do think that we could learn, one is, how to truly look at our surroundings. How many of us ever get up during the day and, like you said, walk the same road, but really it's not the same. Somehow it has changed, but we're just not keenly aware of our surroundings like they are. And I feel the same way about weather. Like you said, he's sound sensitive. So all of a sudden he'll start to act funny and I'll be like, what's going on? And then 10 minutes later, I'll hear a clap of thunder and I'll be like, he has a particular place in the house that he goes when a storm's coming, and he starts to pace and I'll be like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden boom, and I'll be like, oh, okay. Like he must have heard it or sensed it. I think he feels the barometric pressure. So a lot more easily, a lot more than I do. So it's always uncanny to me, and how it must be I was on a call last week and I have a friend who has a Siamese cat, and I love Siamese, and his cat was going nuts, off of the table, on the table, all across the computer, everywhere. And Tonka, my dog, was doing the same thing. He was going from window to window, up and down. And I was like, what's going on? And I thought, well, maybe there's something happening atmospherically that I don't know, because it was just this constant activity. And I don't know if we ended up getting a storm, but I think that they are so much more attuned to their surroundings. And I often wonder about that for myself, what could I do to become more aware? And I'm pretty try to as far as scenery goes and lighting in the sky, shades of light and stuff, I try to appreciate things like that. But I think animals really do kind of embody that. That's how they live their lives, is navigating through that, smells and surfaces and hearing. Exactly. Thank you, David. Hearing, their senses are so keen, far more than ours are.
They feel those pressures. I know we're in Houston. We didn't have much storms this year. Hope winter's not bad, but anyway, usually Houston will get 1 or 2 hurricanes, and in hurricanes you'll get tornadoes and stuff like that, and low pressure zones. But whenever that happens, our cats usually have a tendency to kind of stay under a doorway, because that's supposed to be one of the safest places you can be. So the roof doesn't cave in, all that kind of stuff and everything like that. And so they have an understanding of things that we don't. It's really interesting.
We need to,
It is really-
we need to observe them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Exactly. I sometimes if it's something's happening, and the first time it happened with Tonka, he was a puppy when Hurricane Sandy hit the Northeast, and I was living in New Jersey, and we got hit really hard. And he was a puppy, and I remember the whole week before, he didn't want to play with one toy. It was like, and I couldn't get it. I thought, well, maybe he's outgrown them. I mean, I don't know. He was like 5-6 months. Maybe he doesn't like those toys anymore. And the storm hit on Sunday night and Monday. And that Monday in the afternoon, it cleared and every toy came out of the basket. Like all of a sudden he was playing with everything. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had a feeling like he just could feel that energy of the storm. And he was, for whatever reason, he had to feel like he had to use his resources for something else. Probably in the wild, he would have had to like make sure he was protected and sheltered and food and all that kind of stuff. But there are true lessons in kind of how to live. And I really do think like that mirroring of us, if we pay attention to our behavior, like, you know, John now has to do with his dog, you know, he realizes that if, you know, because I think that, you know, they can tell us a lot about ourselves.
I think that the
Yeah,
sentence
I saw one. Go ahead, Gary.
you said at the beginning, we are given the pets that we need. I think I like that.
Well, I feel like he's forced me to work on a lot of stuff that I really would have never worked on, you know, and, you know, interestingly enough, I remember years ago, I went and gave a class on essential oils at a holistic veterinary practice. And at the end, this woman came up to me and she said to me, you know, it's really interesting. She wanted to talk to me about her pet that had recurring urinary tract infections and what she could do. And she said to me, you know, it's really interesting because, you know, my pet has that issue, but so do I. And I remember thinking, it wasn't the first time I experienced that and heard about that. And I was like, that's really interesting. And getting into a lot more things that were energy based, like Reiki and everything, and some traditional Chinese medicine, I thought, well, you know, maybe it has something to do with emotions and that they're sharing the same household or whatever. And then some of the more recent literature I've read is about microbiome. And so it's about the microflora, the microbiology of our system, and that pets and humans in the same household will share similar microbiomes. And so that kind of would explain susceptibility to disease. It also turns out that, you know, kids with families of pets usually are less asthmatic and have less allergies. I mean, people think they're dirty, but actually they found that, you know, there's actually a decrease in some common everyday ailments if you live with a pet.
So what are the, as we're coming towards the end here, Jan, are there any literature, any stuff that we can read, any podcasts, any videos? I mentioned the documentary The Herd, if anyone wants to watch that, on therapy with horses. But do you recommend anything that we can watch to get a better idea of this communication with pets? And
there's I don't know if anybody's heard of the HeartMath Institute. HeartMath is and I'm glad to share the link. I can, you know, send it to you, David, and then we could share with everybody. But it's all about heart rate variability and what they call heart coherence, is the fact that our heart communicates a lot more with the brain than we think it does. Everybody used to always say that the brain was sending a lot of messages to the heart, but really the heart sends more messages to the brain. And based on heart rate and heartbeat, and so the brain gets these messages, and you're looking for things like heart coherence, and which is sort of like a harmonious melding of mind, body, spirit. It's kind of like when you're perfectly in harmony. And they've done some really cool work with pets and heart rate variability. And one of the And so I'll share maybe a link to
Maybe if you could send it to me later, and I'll put it on the LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn page, and then so everyone can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, like any podcast or a video or a film or something like that, we can get a little bit deeper into the subject.
Yeah, there's also a great book about I think it was a novel, but it was just a beautiful story about an autistic boy who had never spoken, and then his father took him to like somewhere, I don't know, maybe it was like the Himalayas or something, and he got on the horse, and for the first time in his life he actually spoke. And it talks about his relationship with the horse. It was really interesting, and it's a beautiful story. I mean, just the fact that, you know, this animal changed this boy's life. And
you know what I find, that there are animal lovers, and then there are people who are afraid of animals, like the people who just, or they think they're dirty or they're dangerous or they'll attack them and so on. So I'll be walking down the street with my dog, and I have people sort of like hide, you know, sort of whoa, or crossing the road and putting their kids away. And I think I've got a dog; it's a border collie. It's not like a bear or something like that. And I think, and so I don't know. I mean that and he's on a lead, and they'll just drag their kids away, and they'll take them away quickly. So I think there's a lot of misconception, or there's a lot of I don't know, people just don't understand what pets and dogs are. And then I got this other reflection as well. In some countries, that people even eat pets.
Yeah.
If you look at China, if you look at, like, horses are eaten in Italy. I mean, not live horses, obviously, but I mean, you know, horse meat can be bought in butchers in Italy. You can buy dogs in Chinese markets, and you know, they're eaten there, and cats too. And so I just sort of try to get my head around this. Are we like having these animals in the house, and other people are actually eating those? And some of these pets of ours are actually more human to us than pets, than animals. You know, we treat them as humans. So
right.
It's a lot
They're
of
family. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said they're family.
Yeah, they are for a lot of people. And I agree with you there. It seems to spread over like almost extremes, where you have like pet people and you have people who are so not pet people. And I mean, you know, part of me never understands. Like, I mean, I don't understand. Even in the wild, I think animals have, I mean, they have a place in our ecosystem, so we need them. But I think the last statistic I read was something like 50% of the global population has pets now. That's a huge number of people. I mean, I know, as the last I read, and this was not the most latest, it might have been in 2021, 70% of American households have either a cat or a dog, which is a huge number. And I think that number's only gone up with COVID, after COVID. And like during the pandemic, it went up. And I think it's pretty, you know, for originally they had a little bit of an upsurge in the shelters after COVID, because really people realized what it was like to have a pet. Because so many people had never had a pet, and then all of a sudden they were like, oh my gosh, you mean I have to walk it and I have to take care of it and all that kind of stuff. But in general, I know David's laughing, but people who don't have a pet like don't know what, you know, what it's like to have a pet. So you're like, oh my gosh.
But you've got someone, you know, somewhere like China, where someone might have a dog as a pet, and yet you can actually buy a dog and eat it. And I think, well, how does this society get their head around that? Someone's walking their dog, you know, and it's a pet, it's on a lead, and you go to this, and we were years ago, I was in China, I was in a market just, and there were dogs just hanging, you know, they're together, that you could buy one and actually take it home. And I thought, whoa. So how does that work? I mean, how do you?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, I happen to be a vegan, but it's really not like, it wasn't because I don't eat, like it was for health reasons much more than it was for sort of philosophical reasons at the time when I became a vegan. But I often wondered that, like, because I don't know why, but it's also changed in our country, like in the US, it has changed a lot in the last 30 or 40 years. in the fact that when I was a kid, most cats were outdoor cats. Very few people had indoor cats. It was indoor outdoor. And in a lot of cases, most dogs were outdoor dogs. Like they had dog houses and they were supposed to be outside, and people like didn't really bring them in the house much. And then all of a sudden that changed, you know, there was a shift. I think the increase has to do with a shift in people feeling disconnected from people and lonely. And I think animals are a huge comfort to people. And they don't feel as isolated and they feel loved and whatnot.
Well, I think as the direction we're going to with this isolation and, you know, this artificial intelligence taking over and all this kind of stuff. So people are still feeling, you know, disconnected. We're going through screens, we're connecting through screens. Yeah, so I think there is a need for affection and connection, and whether we get that through a human contact or through a pet, I think there's going to be more of a need for it as we move along. So as we come to the end, listen, we're coming to the end. I don't want people just jumping off the webinar. So I want to say goodbye to everyone. David, thank you for joining. John, Helena, Jan. I've recorded the webinar, so it's going to be put on you'll find it on the YouTube, on my YouTube channel. You can take a look at it. There's going to be there is a BEwell every Tuesday from 5 to 6 Italian time, which is whatever your time is around the world. Try to jump in. If you see it on the link on my LinkedIn page, if you want to share with your network, with your friends, or just come along if you find something interesting, it's great to have you. Okay, so take care, and hopefully I'll see you next week.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank
See you later.
you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Hi, Jan. Okay, let me stop that.
Thanks.